Premier Doug Ford commented on a criminal case in Lindsay today where a man was charged for allegedly beating an intruder in his apartment earlier this week.
So this criminal that's wanted by the police breaks into this guy's house. This guy gives him a beating, and this guy gets charged. And the other guy gets charged. But something is broken. I know if someone breaks into my house or someone else's, you're going to fight for your life. This guy has a weapon. You're going to use any force you possibly can to protect your family.
Now, the incident happened early Monday morning. A man says he woke up to an intruder in his apartment. Police say a fight ensued. The intruder was left with life-threatening injuries. The 44-year-old resident of that apartment is now charged with aggravated assault and assault with a weapon. The Kawartha Lakes police chief issued a statement because of the controversy surrounding the case. It reads, in part, the law requires that any defensive action be proportionate to the threat faced. This means that while homeowners do have the right to protect themselves and their property, the use of force must be reasonable given the circumstances.
And some people in Lindsay say they're surprised to hear the resident in this case has been charged.
And hopefully the Crown Attorney will know enough to say, you know what, this isn't winnable. The police should apologize and just let him go on his way.
You know, what is this world coming to? You know, again, don't let this happen, because you should be able to defend your home if you can. I'm thinking about I can't. So please straighten this out, because this is wrong. You should be able to take care of yourself if you can.
Joining us live now is criminal defense attorney Joseph Newberger. Joseph, thank you very much for joining us at this hour. We really appreciate it. Can you tell us a little bit, one, about how the law works when it really just basics right now? If someone comes into your home and they're trying to rob you and they have a gun or a knife or difference between them, can you tell us what would go on? Or let the case...
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, an individual has a right to protect their property, but more importantly, to protect themselves or anyone who's in their home from any imminent threat. So if an individual enters your home, like a home invasion, then you're allowed to use reasonable force to propel their threat. Now, circumstances depend on what the individual is using to commit their act of crime. So if they are in possession of a knife, that certainly is a very heightened risk where there is very clear imminent risk of harm or death. So you're allowed to use fairly significant force to repel that individual, and you may have no choice simply because you're protecting others in your home and yourself. If it's a gun, that's extremely serious as well, and it's very clear that there's imminent risk of harm or death. And again, you could use significant force, including lethal force in those circumstances. It gets more murky where there is some form of a weapon, but it may not necessarily be a knife, or it could be a knife, but not one that you typically see in some home invasions or other break and enters. And we have to be careful, because an individual who is responding to this threat could be early morning hours, just woken up, extremely traumatized at that particular moment, in shock, and they're acting. They're not able to measure exactly what force they're using at any given moment, or grabbing for a weapon like a baseball bat or something to use to defend themselves. So the law makes allowance for that. In these circumstances right now, we don't have a lot of information, but that's sort of the general outline of self-defense law in Canada.
Yeah, the police chief, issued a statement today sort of defending his decision to lay these charges. And part of his statement says that, homeowners do have the right to protect themselves and their property, but the use of force must be reasonable given the circumstances. I guess my question, and I think for a lot of people, the question here becomes, how can you make a real judgment call when you have an armed intruder in your home? And I guess my question to you, Joseph, is, will these charges hold up in court?
We don't know. We really don't know enough. And that's why I think we have to be very careful to withhold judgment right now and not be overly critical of the police, because we don't know exactly what took place. So let's take a hypothetical situation for a moment. An intruder comes in, is met by the homeowner uses a bat. He is able to render the person incapable of using a weapon. They're now on the floor, they're not reacting, and instead of calling 911, the assault continues. If the assault continues and the person is harmed to the point that they have life-altering injuries or even die, You can imagine those circumstances, you're dealing with excessive force, and the individual who's the homeowner could be charged with aggravated assault or something more serious. So that's just a hypothetical. So we really need to know the details of what happened inside that home before we can make a real good assessment of whether the case should be withdrawn or not. But I'm sure the Crown Attorney will be carefully assessing it, and I'm fairly sure the police really wanted to be very careful before charging the homeowner. But I understand how this is certainly very irritable and concerning to the public.
Well, to Lena's point, the police chief did even say in their statement ultimately that being charged doesn't mean you're convicted. Those are very separate things. And with that in mind, Joseph, just thinking a little bit about how our law works and how we've had statements from our premier that have tried to liken our legal system. He said this before. He wants a legal system that's closer to the United States, where judges are appointed politically. And he also is now talking about stand your ground laws, how we should potentially have those in Canada. We have gone a long way from Hammurabi's Code. We had at one point a law that said eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Do we, as Canadian law right now, do we have places in the law where we're able to go for, further? Are we? I guess the question really is, do we have times where we are able to use proportional force that could kill people if it's allowed because of the circumstances?
Absolutely, and I understand what you're getting at. So let me just say a couple of things. I don't want to go on too long. One, we need to ensure that we have confidence in our police system and in our justice system. That's one important thing. So broad statements about how we should be more close to the United States is not helpful. And in the United States, let me just draw this distinction. They have the castle law. So you can use pretty much any force you need to protect your home from an intruder. We don't have that in Canada. But we do have sufficient self-defense laws that are broad enough that if an individual comes in with a knife or a gun and you are at serious risk of bodily harm or death, you can respond with lethal force. And there will be all sorts of circumstances you have to look at as to what weapon you are using, or if you're using, if you're a lawful gun owner. But we do have sufficient allowance and broadness of the law for those circumstances to happen. But we do not want to go down the road of the United States where you strictly have the castle law, in my opinion. But leaving that aside, when you mention stand your ground, there's no duty to retreat in Canada. So if somebody comes in, you don't have to run away. If there's imminent risk to you right away, you're allowed to respond to that with reasonable force.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Criminal defense lawyer Joseph Neuberger. This has been a really interesting conversation. We so appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you. Have a good night, guys.
You too.